G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Okay people, before I actually get into this video, two little quick things I want to plug, right? The first is, have a look there on screen, Punch Perfect Boxing. You've heard me mention it several times, but me and Jamie done a live stream together last night. I'm going to get him on the channel at some stage this week. I need to just see what way I am, but I did that last night with him. We done it live. It was great fun. Go over there, give his channel a look. Great channel. Jamie's a great guy, really knows the stuff as well. So there's that. Second of all, right, obviously with the new year, right, there's things I want to do. There's things I want to do on this channel, and you know, it's going to involve me hopefully in the next month or so, probably the next 6 weeks or so, give or take, in around that time, getting over to the UK to do a few more, you know, things over there, and hopefully get to a few shows, get some, you know, credentials and stuff like that, which shouldn't be an issue, but look, we'll wait and see how that goes. That's what I want to do on this channel anyways. That's the plan for the new year on here, as well as grow it from here and obviously improve a few things. So I have an iPad ordered for the watch alongs to look a bit more professional. But one thing I want to do as well is I started the channel there back in the summer of last year. It was the second channel. It was a crime channel, which has been put on the back burner for the time being, just because I've been focusing on this channel a lot and I've had other things going on. But the new year, which obviously it is now, is 2022, I'm going to get back focusing on that. Have a look there on screen. It's called True Crime with G-Man. It's got about 400 and something subs at the minute. That I'm going to work on this week. I'll get a video up. That's a weekly every kind of 10 days I do a video on there, or I will be anyway. So if you could give that a look, give it a subscribe if you haven't already. If you like your true crime, there's a couple of videos up there already, but we'll get back working on that. Now, let's get into the proper show. So, first review of the week of 2022. And, you know, this time of year is always kind of a bit dull in boxing, even in the best of times, because January is always a month, I've said it before, where it's kind of, like, even in the best of times, it's never exactly the busiest for boxing in terms of news, in terms of fights being made, in terms of fights happening. Several reasons for that, you know, just straight after Christmas, a lot of fighters probably wouldn't be on weight. A lot of fighters wouldn't want to do the weight over Christmas. A lot of fighters talk about that, like having Christmas off. People spend a lot of money over Christmas and they mightn't have money for tickets, etc, etc. So it's never a great month for boxing. It's never a great month for news. It's more so February. That's a good month for that. But that's when normally boxing tends to kind of start. And from what I've noticed in my time, January and July are usually the months in which boxing is kind of pretty quiet. It normally tends to be anyway. So there's not a great deal to talk about, but there is enough news that we can talk about. There's been fights that have happened, obviously, in the last day. And, you know, I normally do this on Monday mornings, but it was a late one for me last night, so we're only getting it done now. So, obviously, I think we need to start with the card that happened in America on New Year's, which was the Luis Ortiz, Charles Martin card. I already did a review for two of the fights on there, but I'll talk about the other fights that have happened. Obviously, we'll start in order of main event down the card. Okay, so obviously Charles Martin, Luis Ortiz. I think, like many people, I picked Charles Martin to win. I thought that Ortiz's age would really come back to bite him in this fight. And in many ways, like, although Ortiz won, now I said this on Jamie's channel last night, I find it very, like, Ortiz is there for the taking. He's there for the taking for anyone. He really is. He looked absolutely shot in that fight. He looked very slow. His legs didn't look right at all. Still has power. Still has some good, you know, boxing ability. That was, you know, he was well schooled amateur, was Luis Ortiz. He's very good fundamentals. That's definitely not got anywhere. Definitely has punching power as well. But in terms of the reflexes, in terms of the speed, in terms of the punch resistance, everything seems to be gone. And I said I don't know whether to give Ortiz credit for being able to weather that storm and, you know, snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, or if I should be critical of Charles Martin, who was able to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory because he had a shot fighter in front of him and he just didn't step on the gas. And I heard Hatman saying in his post-fight review that when you've got a fighter like Luis Ortiz in front of you, if you just set a pace, although Charles Martin is not the youngest heavyweight in the world, he's still significantly younger than Luis Ortiz. You would imagine he could fight at a more frantic pace than Ortiz could, and Ortiz wouldn't really been able to to match that pace, he would have been probably found wanting. So that fight, I just find it amazing that Martin was able to let that fight slip away. And as I say, credit to Ortiz. He had to come through some rough patches. He did. But make no mistake about it, Ortiz has been saying that, he's still, one of the contenders at heavyweight, that he's still, dangerous for people. I'd see any top 10 heavyweight beating Luis Ortiz quite comfortably. Like, for example, this wasn't a final eliminator, this was an IBF eliminator, so I'd imagine the IBF would order Ortiz versus Hrgovic next. If that fight happens, I'm picking, although Hrgovic hasn't been looking amazing as of late, he's been kind of, I think, how would I describe it? He's kind of, I think he's kind of got so used to fighting these kind of below par oppositions that he's kind of meeting that level, if you almost get me. So he's not as in good a shape as he used to be. He's looking a bit more sloppy because he's just not being able to get these progression fights. He's just sticking around fighting these, what was the guy's name, Radonic, the guys like that who are levels below him. And you should be fighting a lot better fighters than that. And I'd still pick him over Ortiz, definitely, but I wonder if maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say regressed, but I wonder if he stagnated as a fighter because he's just not been getting good opponents. But him against Ortiz, if that happens, I would pick Hrgovic to beat Ortiz. I picked, like I said, I picked the majority of top 10 heavyweights to beat Luis Ortiz now at this stage. I think he's there for the taking. I think he's absolutely there for the taking. And we'll wait and see who he fights next. I would imagine, knowing PBC and knowing how they do things, they probably like to keep that in-house, and they'll probably look at going down the likes of Andy Ruiz, which might do good numbers. To be fair, Andy Ruiz, Mexico versus Cuba. Andy Ruiz, they probably do it on pay-per-view, but I would favour Andy Ruiz heavily in that fight. I'd favour Andy Ruiz to just outwork Luis Ortiz, put it on him, and that'd be that pretty much. With regards Gerald Washington got stopped again by the guy Ali Damanzi or something like that. I can't really pronounce the guy's last name, but yeah, that was actually not a bad fight. To be fair, Gerald Washington being stopped again, I mean, it's quite remarkable, really. I mean, like, he stopped Hellenius, and he stopped him quite badly, and he's just, he never, I would say, regressed, but he was never amazing to begin with. He always had good fundamentals, but never had the killer instinct. And I think now Washington, that's what, his 5th loss, all by knockout. Are they all by knockout? Yeah, I think they're all by knockout. So yeah, Washington, look, I'd say that's probably the end of him. With regards Frank Sanchez versus Christian Hammer, I believe Christian Hammer landed in 10 rounds, 24 punches on Frank Sanchez. It was very low volume. Frank Sanchez did what he needed to do. I knew as soon as we heard Christian Hammer's name, that was what we were going to get. We're going to get a 10 round UD. Frank Sanchez, the kind of guy where he just lets his boxing do the talking. He's not the most aggressive fighter you'd ever see. He's happy to just use his speed, boxing, movement, just to win these fights. People have questioned his punching power, as I've said a few times. I think his power is there, but I just think that it's an element that he just kind of puts on the back foot, if you get me. He won't go looking for the knockout if he doesn't need to. He's quite happy just to put a fighter in his place, box for 10, 12 rounds, however long it needs to be, and then pick up the win like that. He was originally meant to fight Negron. That would have been a better fight. That would have Negron's not particularly good heavyweight, but that would have been a much better fight in my opinion, and it would have been more likely that we would have seen a knockout from Frank Sanchez in that fight as opposed to this against Christian Hammer. Obviously, the fight then thereafter was a rematch between Michael Coffey versus, I can't remember the guy's name now. Was it Jerry Forrest? No, it wasn't Jerry Forrest. It was Jonathan Rice. I get mixed up between the two. But Jonathan Rice, actually, he quoted here as saying, "This has changed my life. I can quit my job." So to get back-to-back wins. Now, the thing about Johnny Rice in this fight was he was significantly heavier than he was in the fight that was on back in August. He was a good bit heavier against Michael Coffey. Nevertheless, he was still able to get the win, won it on points this time as opposed to stopping him. Jonathan Rice is not a bad fighter, make no mistake. He's not an elite heavyweight, but he's not one of these fighters who, put it like this, he'd give most people a hard time. He would. There is a little bit of talent. Now, I think if he could have made this fight easier for himself if he come in much better shape, make no mistake about that. I think he was in the 280s. 280s or 270s. He was definitely a lot heavier than we're used to seeing him. So I think he could have made that fight a hell of a lot easier if he'd come in a bit better shape. But look, I like seeing, you know, hard, because he's not done things the easy way. It has to be said. So now he's finally getting, you know, a chance where he can, you know, maybe get a bit of backing behind him, maybe take boxing serious. As he said, he can quit his job, so he wants to be able to fight full time now, which is good. It's a good thing for him. So there's that. Obviously, Victor Felst getting a win over Kalladzez. That was a real shootout, wasn't it? That was just like, man, how do I even describe that fight? Even thinking about that fight now, it's like, what went on in that fight? It was just such a shootout. Both guys were down several times. People were saying to me the reason the fight was stopped was because the 3 knockdown rule was in place, which apparently the 3 knockdown rule was in place. But the 3 knockdown rule, for those who don't know, 3 knockdown rule, whenever they're in effect, it's 3 knockdowns in a round. It's not 3 knockdowns in a fight. So if you're talking about it in that sense, what someone could be saying is you could be dropped in the first round, not get dropped at all, then get dropped in the 12th round, the referee can wave it off because it's the 3rd knockdown. No. 3 knockdown rule, when it's in effect, it's 3 knockdowns in a specific round. It's not 2 knockdowns in the first round and 1 knockdown in the second round, 3 knockdowns, fights off. No, it's not like that. Alright, 3 knockdown rule is 3 knockdowns in a specific round. Alright, it's not 3 knockdowns in the fight. Having seen it again, I still think potentially the referee could have let it go on. I can kind of see why he did stop it, to be fair, because, you know, Kalladzez was a little bit worse for wear at the time, but I don't know. I mean, I've seen worse stoppages, put it like that. Certainly here in the UK. I do you know what I want to say? Probably by American standards, American show standards, that stoppage was a little bit, but I'm sure if that was in the UK, I mean, they probably would have stopped that fight. Probably would have stopped it after the 2nd knockdown, to be fair, on Felst, to be honest with you, if it was Howard Foster or someone like that. So that was the card really in a nutshell. And in terms of American boxing, Isaac Cruz is quoted here, Ryan Garcia hasn't been a fighter that's caused any big danger in the division. He's more focused on making videos and followers on Instagram, but if he wants to fight me, let him come at me. And Ryan Garcia actually responded and he said, because he's actually targeting Isaac Cruz as his comeback fight, because Ryan Garcia fought Luke Campbell around about this time last year. It was January 2021, and he's not fought since then. He says a lot of people are high on this guy right now because he gave Tank a good fight. It's a perfect opportunity to me show how much of a different level that I am to Tank. Basically, he's saying that he wants to go in there and basically show that he's better than Tank. So basically, Garcia wants to do a better job on Isaac Cruz than Tank Davis. He wants to use that as a yardstick to prove basically that he's better. How about this, right? Instead of fighting Isaac Cruz, why don't you fight Tank Davis? You know, Ryan Garcia this time last year fought Luke Campbell, which was a good win. You know, he got up off the canvas in that fight to win the fight. But he hasn't done anything. See, literally, he's done nothing since then. He's had no fights since then. Alright, there's no announcement for any up and coming fights. You know, Isaac Cruz is a good fighter, but like, I'd like to see him in there against a Tank Davis. I'd like to see him in there against the Devin Haney guys like that. I'm not saying he beats them guys. Him and Tank Davis would be a great fight. Him and Devin Haney, I'd favour Devin Haney. If Devin Haney just kept it at range and boxed Ryan Garcia, he should win that fight. But Ryan Garcia, I don't know what's happening with him. I really don't. Before Christmas, I ran a little, because I was seeing the Ring magazine release their kind of like Fighter of the Year, you know, Prospect of the Year, etc., etc. They were doing that. For me, I want to read out real quickly here the results of the polls I did for like kind of my own kind of, well, on my channel, what people's opinion of Fighter of the Year, Prospect of the Year, etc. was. Just the results. First one was obviously Fighter of the Year. Now, I would have picked Alexander Usyk, but Canelo Alvarez with 61% of the votes. On my channel, on G-Man's awards for Fighter of the Year, Canelo Alvarez the winner. There's an achievement. Winning it on a YouTuber's community tab. But Canelo Alvarez won that. For Female Fighter of the Year was tied between Katie Taylor and Savannah Marshall, so whichever you prefer there. Fight of the Year was Fury Wilder 3. That took 65% of the votes. Trainer of the Year, Eddie Reynoso. Very much in line with what the Ring Magazine awards were, because Eddie Reynoso and I believe Canelo and Fury Wilder 3 won them. Breakout star of the year, Kalladzez Jr., of course, 79% of the votes. Well done to him. Female breakout fighter of the year, Alicia Baumgardner. Very good to her. Yep, no arguments there. She subsequently signed with DAZN. Prospect of the year was actually fairly unanimous. Jared Anderson, excellent fighter, definitely one of the guys I'll be keeping my eye on in 2022. Female prospect of the year, Rihanna Dixon, took that. There was a lot more names I could have added to there, but YouTube only lets you put 5 in. But Rihanna Dixon, she won from Raven Chapman, Nicola Hopewell, Kyan Hansen, and Katie Healy. Katie Healy would have been my pick. I think she's looking very good. So, but shout out to Rihanna Dixon winning there. Upset of the year, Lopez versus Kalladzez. Schooling of the year, AJ Usyk. KO of the year, it was Fury Wilder. I think the Ring magazine gave the same pick I did, which was Rosado versus Melikuziev. Let's have a look-see. Obviously, in other news, Eubank Jr. versus Liam Williams, that's going to be put on the back burner. That's going to have to get rescheduled yet again. Meant to happen, obviously, in December. And that was bizarre because Liam Williams, right? I reckon it was something to do with the training issue, because Liam Williams was at that press conference, I believe, with Dominic Ingle, and subsequently it was announced days after that he had an injury, a shoulder injury. It was an injury anyway, and then started training with Adam Boot, which I think stylistically that is not good. Like, that really is a, like, I'm nothing against Adam Boot as a trainer, but he has a specific style that he teaches fighters. Liam Williams just does not fit Adam Boot's style in the slightest. I don't know where that move came from, but they pushed it back to January, and now the British Boxing Board of Control, in their infinite wisdom, have decided to put an end to boxing, certainly for the month of January, despite the fact there is no scientific evidence that it will make any difference. But AO, if you ask Rob Smith from the British Boxing Board of Control, you know, I mean, that guy, not saying that it was his necessarily idea, it was probably a vote, but yeah, absolutely stupid ruling. It is monumentally stupid ruling from the British Boxing Board of Control, but they'll move that fight back again, probably to March or April, and you know, we'll see. I know that we're going to get Clarissa Shields out on that card, so that's more time. Like, that's more time out of the ring for her. I know some people don't like Clarissa Shields, but like, still, it's more time out of the ring for her. It's more time out of the ring for a lot of these fighters. So that fight's getting pushed back. Definitely. We'll see. You know, people have been asking me about my opinion on that, and will it go on longer than a month? I can't imagine it will, because Eddie Hearn's been talking about putting shows on in February, and let's be frank, Eddie Hearn is the type of promoter where if the British Boxing Board of Control make it difficult and say, oh, you can't put shows on in February, he would be the kind of guy where he'd have, and same with Pro Bellum, they'd have no problem putting them shows on in different countries. And I don't think the British Boxing Board of Control would want that. I think they'd be the kind of people where they'd be like, no, don't take that away from us. No, we'll let you do what you want. So I'd say if Eddie Hearn is announcing shows, which I'll talk about now in a sec, because there's one fight that's been rumoured, it is only a rumour, for March, that I think they'll be well inclined to let that fight happen. But yeah, Eubank Jr. versus Williams is on the back foot for the time being. Francis Ngannou wants to box Fury or Wilder. So he's been saying even if he can negotiate a UFC deal, part of the deal has to have boxing in it. I can't see myself retiring without boxing Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder. Francis Ngannou versus Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. Well, I can't see him fighting Tyson Fury. Deontay Wilder, I mean, Deontay Wilder's been talking about retiring. Well, he's been kind of hinting at retiring, but him against Ngannou, I mean, if there was enough money on table, would Deontay Wilder take that fight? Because Francis Ngannou can punch a bit, but in terms of boxing, you know, he's a striker, yeah, but Deontay Wilder has fought guys like Luis Ortiz. He's fought guys like Tyson Fury. He's fought guys like Gerald Washington. He's fought, who else was the other big guy he fought? I can't think of. Brazil, who are technically probably every bit as good. Well, Luis Ortiz definitely is, and so same as Tyson Fury. So I can't see Ngannou primarily coming from a UFC background or MMA background. I know he's mainly a striker, but that'd be interesting. Deontay Wilder would take his head clean off. and I was listening to a lot of Hatman's videos on boxing versus UFC / MMA. I am about as casual an MMA fan as you will get. I know very little about the sport, so I'm not even going to chive in on boxing versus UFC because I just don't know enough about UFC, MMA. I know some of the fighters, definitely, but I don't know how many shows, like pay-per-views are on a year and stuff like that. I've tried to watch MMA and I've tried to get into it, and it's just never really, I don't know. I have watched shows in MMA. I have watched UFC shows, McGregor, Rousey, John Jones, guys like that, DC. But it just never really, it just never really stuck with me like boxing has. It never really has. In terms of fights that are being rumoured, and I've seen this rumour, it was kind of doing the rounds a couple of days ago on Twitter. Josh Warrington may be back out on the 13th or the 26th of March in a world title fight against Kiko Martinez. That's been a rumour that's been reported from several sources on Twitter. It's not been on any main kind of like Mike Coppinger boxing scene or anything like that, but I've seen it in a couple of other boxing forums on Twitter that there's a lot of rumours saying that this fight may well be good to go. Josh Warrington has already beaten Kiko Martinez several years ago. That was his first fight with Frank Warren. It was a very competitive fight, very close fight. A lot of people felt that Josh Warrington was, I don't want to say exposed, but a lot of people felt as though maybe Josh Warrington was overhyped. Subsequently, seeing how Kiko Martinez has acquitted himself and ended up winning a world title again, it kind of puts that win has aged a lot better in the immediate aftermath of that, because it was majority decision. Josh Warrington did win the fight, but it was close. It was competitive throughout. So it's aged a lot better. Obviously, some people will be saying, well, will Kid Galahad not get a rematch, given the fact it was a voluntary? Kid Galahad, as far as I'm aware, and as far as Eddie Hearn has been hitting, that he's going to move up to 130. So that means it's not going to happen. Kid Galahad he did look pretty bad on the scales, it has to be said, and I'd say 130 is his preferred hunting ground at this stage. For Eddie Hearn, it makes sense to do this fight because Josh Warrington escaped. He really did escape that Mauricio Lara rematch. He really did. He did Houdini, because he was going to get knocked out sooner or later in that rematch, and he did a Houdini and he got out of that fight. Say what you want to say about the headbutt, whether you think it was intentional or unintentional, it's irrelevant now. That's been and done. If he goes in and fights what's the guy's name, Kiko Martinez, and he wins, Eddie Hearn, I'd say Eddie Hearn, after Kid Galahad lost, was probably a bit down the fact that his fighters lost. Then maybe someone mentioned Josh Warrington and lights went off in his head, because Josh Warrington's a bigger draw. He is, than Kid Galahad. He is. There's no ifs or buts. He is. He's a massive draw up there in Leeds. If he goes in there in a world title fight against Kiko Martinez, big card, right? Big card. If he beats him, Eddie Hearn has 3 more shows, give or take, in around that with Josh Warrington, where he can milk that IBF title. Maybe even if Lee Wood comes through Michael Conlon, which I expect he will do, there's a unification in-house. I know I think Lee Wood is kind of associated with MTK as well, but he's been working with Eddie Hearn, I think on a fight by fight basis, certainly anyway, over the last few years. So they could do that in-house there. So makes sense for Eddie Hearn to try and get Kiko Martinez in there with Josh Warrington. And if Josh Warrington beats Kiko Martinez, and if Lee Wood ends up beating Michael Conlon, could make a lot of sense from a financial point of view, and especially if it's a unification. Can you imagine Josh Warrington beats Kiko Martinez, unifies with Lee Wood if he beats Michael Conlon? That'd be a massive fight. They do that in Headingley again, probably. I still feel that Mauricio Lara is a bit hard done by the fact that he beat Josh Warrington. He probably would have beaten him again, and now he's probably going to be in the dark for a while, because he kind of goes into the who needs you category, because he's not a massive draw as Mauricio Lara. He's not a massive name, certainly that I've known anyway, but he's a good fighter. He has really, really, really good punching power. He's a danger to anyone with that punching power, so it's a bit of a shame there. We'll leave it with this WBC, the Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte situation. Obviously I talked about that at length during the week. A lot of people are upset because the WBC are making Dillian Whyte jump through all these hoops. I said it on Jamie's show last night, and I'll say it again. What does Dillian Whyte expect? I'm not saying it's a good thing what the WBC are doing now, but what does he expect? Mauricio Sulaiman is just Mauricio Sullivan has his favourites. Chris Andre spoke about this, and he does. I remember it was one of Deontay Wilder's defenses. It might have been the first Luis Ortiz fight, where he was in the ring, and I think he was hugging Deontay Wilder, like hugging your champion, because you're so happy your champion won. Where you should really be, it should really matter a little who wins. You know, at the end of the day, you know, he was very, very big on Deontay Wilder, saying, you know, he was on par with Larry Holmes for his jab and stuff like that, wearing Canelo Alvarez hats, you know, giving him a pass with the, you know, tainted meat. When that's kind of the guy who's running the sanctioning body, and look, all the sanctioning bodies have their issues, but you don't see the president of the IBF, you know, wearing AJ t-shirts. You don't see that with the WBO. The WBA are a bit all over the shop as well, but they're not as bad as the WBC. WBC really are head and shoulders above everyone else when it comes to absolute effery and just sheer favoritism. And you're Dylan Whyte, if you're trying to be, as Hatman would say, a bull in the china shop, and just trying to really, you know, run through, and I want my title shot, I'll go down the court route. You're doing that with someone like Sullivan. Sullivan is probably going to, if you do that, he's going to try and make life hard for you. Because Mauricio Sullivan, his dad Jose Sullivan was not the best, but Mauricio really is. I mean, he takes the biscuit in terms of scumbaggery. I mean, this is a man who's trying to mandate the Foghorn Leghorn for fighters to take part in WBC sanction bouts. Like, what? And that's going to rear up and bite him in the arse, because there's going to be fighters who are going to say, well, I won't fight for your title then. If they don't want it, they're just going to say, well, I'm not going to fight for you. I'm not going to fight for your title. Simple as. Like I said in that video, there could be instances where this could come back to be a good thing, in a blessing in disguise almost for Dylan Whyte, if they can get it on the zone. Even though it might be in Manchester, it would still be on the Dylan Whyte home platform. But expect some more twists in this Dylan Whyte Tyson Fury situation. And you know something, I wouldn't at all be shocked, right? It wouldn't shock me if they announced Tyson Fury as franchise champion, elevated Dylan Whyte to champion, we'll say like regular champion, but we're still saying Tyson Fury is our main champion, so if we fight Usyk, they'll be undisputed. Do you know what sort of way, to kind of just almost the kind of one last kick in the teeth to Dylan Whyte, where it's like, alright, well now Tyson Fury is our franchise champion, you don't have to fight him, but you might have to fight Deontay Wilder as a mandatory, and even if you win, you're just kind of like the regular champion, and if Fury fights Usyk, it's undisputed. You know what sort of way, to really just kind of say to Dylan Whyte, yeah, there you go, kick you while you're down. Wouldn't rule it out at all with the WBC. Would not rule it out at all. That's the way it is. Like, I mean, like, how do I say it? Like, patience, I suppose, is a virtue at the end of the day, and sometimes maybe it is better to just, depending on who you're dealing with. Someone like Sullivan, you're probably better off just being patient, you know. And the timing for Dylan Whyte to do all that arbitration last year during the summer, where everything was stopped, probably not the best timing. Maybe would have been better in that scenario just to let things settle, and then to see where you stand, as opposed to just going, as Hatman would say, like a bull in the china shop and trying to force your shot. Looking back with the benefit of hindsight, you could say maybe it wasn't the right thing to do if you're Dylan Whyte, but look, it is what it is now. That's my thoughts on that. In terms of everything else, I think that's pretty much it. I think that's pretty much all there is to talk about. Got more in this than I thought I would, to be fair. Actually, I thought I was only going to get like a 15-minute video. I've got over 20 minutes, I'd say now, so it's not too bad. But lads and lassies, for now, I will leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you could, smash the like button, I'd really appreciate that. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. We're already at 6,100, so we're growing. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Peace.